to another week of defaulting to your extraordinary self. I'm excited that you're here, and this episode is going to be something that maybe I'm going to share some things that aren't fully formed. I want to know your thoughts on it. So if you enjoy this episode, make sure you subscribe and you share this episode so that we can create a great big community of those who get up every day and aspire to default to, yes, your extraordinary self. We're talking about happiness this week, and I guess you could probably argue for that we're always talking about happiness because we tend to think a lot about in terms of, am I happy or not happy? And I say it all the time in my coaching sessions is that happiness is what it is, and it's not going to be all the time. So my coach likes to say 50-50. You're going to have some feelings that are happy and some that are not. And that's okay. It's part of the human experience. The human mind tends to wander and engage in more stimulus-independent thought, which allows for learning and planning. But all of that comes at an emotional cost. Now, stimulus-independent thought refers to that mind's ability to think and daydream without any external triggers. And this means that even when we are not actively engaged in a task, our minds continue to process information and generate new ideas. This ability is really beneficial for learning and planning. It also leads to negative emotions such as anxiety and worry. And these are things that we are constantly trying to overcome. Now, the human mind possesses a remarkable ability to detach from present moments and a lot of times, like I said, engage in that stimulus-independent thought. And this mental wandering involves that mind drifting away from the immediate environment. And this leads to that exploration of memories and future scenarios and hypothetical situations. Dr. John Smallwood, he's a leading researcher in this field, describes this as the mind's default mode, as that state where it's untethered from external stimuli. And this is a lot of times what we talk about when we are talking about meditation. So I know this might sound like, where's she going with this? But hang in there with me, okay? So while this wandering, again, seems counterproductive, it does serve vital functions. And research suggests that it facilitates memory consolidation, problem solving, and creative thinking. So you can think about maybe some of those times when you have to pause just to let your brain really absorb it and maybe file it, process it to put it in the right places. When we get in the shower, our minds wander and we aren't trying to necessarily accomplish anything. We go into a little bit of free flow and we get some creative thinking out of that. This is why a lot of times taking a break from a task can allow your mind to wander. That can often result in breakthrough ideas and solutions, like I said, like in the shower. This is because when we let our minds wander, we activate the default mode network in our brains, which is responsible for creative thinking and problem solving. And then additionally, allowing our minds to wander can also improve our mood and reduce stress levels, making us more productive when we return to the task at hand. So next time you find yourself daydreaming or lost in thought, remember that might actually be beneficial for your brain and overall productivity. However, a prolonged engagement in stimulus-independent thought can be associated with increased stress levels, anxiety, and even symptoms of depression. And this is when we tend to maybe rehearse something that we think might happen bad or something that happened in the past. This is that perseverating on all of those things that make us concerned or worry or anxious. Senses of dread come out of this. So before we explore some strategies for maintaining focus on the present, I want to back up then too and understand how happiness is defined in scientific context, because all of this takes a toll and can get in the way of our goals. Positive psychology, a field pioneered by Dr. Martin Seligman, emphasizes well-being and happiness as integral components of mental health. And according to this perspective, happiness is not just the absence of negative emotions, but it encompasses positive feelings, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. And you know that we talk a lot about overall well-being, and that's what this is. Now, neuroscientists delve into the brain's intricacies to unravel the neural underpinnings of happiness. And this is where we're learning a lot about the neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. These are often referred to as happiness chemicals, and they play a crucial role in regulating our mood and emotional well-being. Now, as we default to extraordinary and we cultivate happiness and make our wandering minds more content, we understand that happiness is that complex mix of both mental and brain-related factors. Now, as I really contemplated all of this, and as I have discussions with coaching clients and my own coach, some things came to light about the way we think about happiness. Now, research has shown that people who engage in excessive mind wandering tend to be less happy and more prone to depression and anxiety. In one study, the question was asked, are you thinking about something other than you're currently doing? Now, of the 4 options, the participants were given the option to say no, yes, something pleasant, or something neutral, or yes, something unpleasant. The nature of the people's activities had only really a small impact on whether their minds wandered, and had almost no impact on the pleasantness of topics that their mind wandered to. So one of the bigger areas was at work, in the workplace. Another one was when they're talking or in conversation. Did their minds wander during that time? Did minds wander when they're just relaxing and doing nothing special? When they're taking care of their kids, commuting and traveling while you're driving? Again, that the nature of the people's activities did not have much of an impact on whether their minds wandered, and had almost no impact on the pleasantness of topics to which their minds wandered. So basically what this study showed us is that your mind often takes spontaneous trips to your happy place. About 42% of the time they found that was the case. But your mind also takes you to neutral places. And this was, in this study, it was 31% of the time people were in neutral territories. And then there were 26% of the time more unpleasant thoughts. Now, here's the kicker. Daydreaming about happy things doesn't necessarily make you happy. But when you drift off to neutral or some of those darker territories, things get bad really fast. They leave you deflated and despondent. So the takeaway here is that we are happier when we can stay in the present and make the most of the moment. So when we can decrease some of that mind wandering off into and letting it go. Now, it's important to find a balance, because we did say that some of this is good, but we want to be able to manage it. And I think one of the bigger reasons why is because we want to have a right perception of what happiness is and how we experience it. So it's important, again, to find a balance between allowing our minds to wander and staying focused on a task at hand. Now, one way to do this is practicing mindfulness. And this can help us become more aware of our thoughts and emotions and improve our ability to stay present in the moment. Now, mindfulness can be defined as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So that's to not pass judgment on the things that are happening to say this is good or this is bad. Mindfulness in this way is different than meditation. And a lot of people get these two things mixed up. Meditation is a way to get to mindfulness, but so is yoga and breath work, aromatherapy. There are different ways we can get to being more mindful. And this is where I really want to take a turn to really talk about the view that we have on happiness, because as we pay more attention, as we become mindful, we have to make sure that we're dealing in truth. And so here's some things that I observed. Now, I'm not a therapist, I'm a nurse, and I I'm a coach. And so I have a lot of conversations, mostly with other nurses. So I'm not going to claim to be a behavioral psychologist or a therapist. I'm a coach, I'm a nurse, I'm an observer, and I operate out of wisdom. And I'm trying to bring in from what I'm learning from experts in this field and study it, look at people and how it impacts me. Many people view life as a journey from misery to joy. I would say most of my clients are struggling with a problem, and what they want is to break free of that problem and experience happiness and joy. And they want that happiness and joy, as we all do, more than the misery. And we want to spend more time at the happy end of that spectrum and less time at the miserable end, which is completely understandable. It's reasonable. And so there are some things that go with this expectation that get pulled into here. We a lot of times will believe that if we have the right material possessions, that might be the key to achieving this goal. If we have plenty of money, a good job, a great relationship, a nice home, all of these things are things that honestly, I see them in marketing. And when I'm looking at even specifically personal growth and to coaches, a lot of our marketing is all revolved around our desire or our thought that a good job, a good relationship, a home, a vacation, nice travel experiences, all of those things are the things that are going to bring us happiness. But we also recognize that there are people who possess all of these things and still feel unhappy. So then we think maybe we need to dive deeper and realize that it's not what we have, but what we do that will determine our happiness. If we do the right things, this will make us feel good about ourselves, while doing all the wrong things will make us feel bad or feel guilty or shame. So if I am a nurse and I show up and I don't have the impact or the connection with my patients, or if I set out to start a business and it doesn't get the results or the success that I think that it should, or what I see other people experiencing, then I feel bad or I feel ashamed. Maybe let's say it's a weight loss goal. Let's say you said, oh, if I lose weight and I get fit, I will be happy. I will be happier. And then when it doesn't work out that way, or it doesn't happen as fast or the way it did for someone else, then we feel bad and we feel guilt or shame. Now, the problem with all of this is that we know from experience that good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. And while doing the right thing should be its own reward, life just seems unfair sometimes. I had this experience. I know that there are several really great people with positive attitudes that do all the right things, experiencing really horrible things. And it leaves us feeling a little hopeless, and it just seems unfair. It's thoughts like this that lead us to a more internal direction in our pursuit of happiness and well-being. And then we conclude that it's not what happens that determines our experience, but what we think about what happens. So we begin experimenting with things like affirmations and positive thinking. And I've done this with the thought model that I use in coaching, is we back up on what are you thinking that created the emotions, that drove the behavior, that gave you the outcome. How can we change all of that? Now, we're certain then that if we would just control the flow of our thoughts through our own brain, we would have the key to lifelong happiness. And that actually, in the coaching experience, that in those experiences that I've had personally with my coach and as a coach to someone else, wasn't the goal. It was just getting at truth. But again, we're certain that controlling that flow of thoughts through our own brain, we can have that lifelong happiness if we just think positive thoughts more. And then a lot of people get stuck on this, and then as time goes on, begin to attribute their inability to think only positive thoughts to a lack of skill or effort on their part, instead of recognizing the theory itself is based on an incorrect premise. The idea that you can actually control which thoughts come into your head. I deal with this a lot because I'm naturally cynical, because those thoughts, they pop in automatically. I do not have to work for a cynical thought. I do not have to work for sarcasm. Those things come naturally to me. They flow easily to me. And if that was the goal, then I got it. But it's not always the goal, and a good balance and operating in wisdom and truth doesn't always mean that I can embrace that thought as being true. Sometimes I can't, but sometimes you can. And so this is why I think we should not totally disregard a cynical viewpoint. Gotta weigh all of that in there. Okay, maybe I'm justifying, but regardless, that incorrect premise in which tells us that we can actually control the thoughts that come into our head. To prove this point, I want to give you a challenge. So for the next 60 seconds, I want you just to close your eyes. If you're driving, just let your mind wander for the next 60 seconds and notice all the thoughts that come into your head. All right, let's go. Okay, so first of all, a minute can seem like a very long time. And the other thing is I don't think that I actually chose any of those thoughts on my list. Book club, dog surgery, fingernail polish, work, of course, memberships to cancel, book club, laundry, and again back to book club with a couple little tangents on each one of those subjects. So I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that I didn't choose any of those thoughts, which brings us to what seems like a real sticking point that came up in one of my conversations this week is that, okay, if happiness doesn't come from what I have and I don't choose my thoughts, where does that leave me? That is the conclusion that some people come to. And when they decide that happiness is completely outside of their control, and then they just give up on the pursuit of happiness, and then sometimes actually begin to feel better when they stop trying so hard to be happy, which leads them to another false conclusion that happiness is something that can only be pursued indirectly. And the reason why that's a false conclusion is because it's based on the notion that happiness is something that we can have or not have, or something that if we're not careful, we can lose, which is another thought that I guess can be a little discouraging, because if I can't work for it, if I can't get it, if it just is or isn't, then where am I? Now you're telling me I can't have it? No, I'm telling you that you can't have it or not have it or lose it because it's inside of you. Now, some people in their pursuit of connection and well-being, which is well-being and happiness, like using that interchangeably, decide that since you can't control which thoughts come into your head, the thing is to stop thinking altogether. I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to let it flow. Either they just totally disregard it, or they lean into that complex set of routines like prayer, meditation, practices, and a variety of other disciplines that are all designed to at least temporarily stop us from thinking and bring those feelings of peace and well-being. And many of those disciplines are part of my daily practice, and I've called that personal development. What I'm learning from my time mentoring and coaching is that the problem with all of them is that they take practice. And while it seems a small price to pay, vast majority of people are unwilling or unable to put in 3 months of daily meditation for 20 minutes of daily bliss. So the return on investment doesn't seem like it's going to be all that? And why would I work so hard for something that you're telling me is just within, and maybe I'm never going to get it? And I would say that even in my conversation, in my accountabilities, and in my conversation even with coaches, is that we're all working very hard to maintain some of these practices until we grasp why we're doing it. Now, I happen to enjoy these practices, so I will continue to encourage them, but not for the sake of us changing who we are or changing something fundamentally that I think is wrong with us, as much as it is to get aligned with who we really are, to get aligned with our extraordinary selves. So for you to be aligned with your extraordinary self, I'm going to encourage you to do some of these practices that might expose some of those things that you're believing that aren't true, and unearth some of the things that you believe that are true, that you do have evidence for. And this is why I get really sad when someone starts on the path towards embracing the truth and working it as a model for the decisions we make and obstacles faced and the things that come up, and then decide to take a break from coaching. I get sad about it because I've done it myself. Okay, I learned this model. I've practiced it for a year, and I've paid the coach for a year to learn this. I think I got this. I think I got it on my own. And that's kind of missing the point of coaching. It's so easy to miss the simple misperceptions and the incorrect premises of the way we think. And this is why I place a high value on coaching. Now, you don't necessarily have to hire a coach, although I think having someone equally invested in the outcome as well as objective about how we go about it and the things that are going on is priceless. I do believe that. I place a high value on coaching. I think you could do this with a good friend or a family member that you trust and will be honest with you. Because if we don't have someone to help us catch the truths and hold them sacred, we can get lost in a thought pattern that is based on something that is not true, or that we just have no evidence for, but our brains are creating the evidence. So to us, sometimes our brains can't tell the difference between what is really true and what we think is true. And it's good to have someone objective, someone who will be honest, and someone that you can be authentically curious with to really see, do you have evidence, and is what you're thinking really true? Because we can have some deeply ingrained patterns of looking for what we want outside of ourselves. And sometimes that can get missed for a really long time. So if you're somebody who wants to advance professionally or feel better more often, or at least just be at peace with yourself, having a coach or a mentor or someone who you can be authentically curious and honest with, someone who can be objective, is priceless. We do tend to gravitate towards what we can have, get, accomplish, whatever it is, something outside of ourselves to create what we really want to feel. This is also why goal setting, I will always ask, when you set a goal, we will always explore, how will that meeting that goal make you feel? What feeling are you trying to accomplish with that? Because that's usually what our goals are all about in the first place. Now, let's take another look at one of our fundamental premises for the way we think and what we're pursuing. We have a tendency to go, misery is wrong stuff, wrong actions, wrong thoughts. And joy is the right stuff, actions, right thoughts, or no thoughts. The one thing that is inherent in all of those notions is the idea that misery and joy are somehow things, again, outside of ourselves, and that we need to do things or stop things to get them. But I guess here's another way to look at it. From the time that we are born, we are connected to our innermost joy and at peace with ourselves. And then as we grow, as even babies, through toddlers, through childhood, we learn that our feelings of well-being are attached to external factors such as people and activities. When we do the right things, when we do the wrong things, we get responses from people. Those people that are taking care of us and are dependent on us, they react to the things that we do, and we learn to adjust. right? So we become convinced that love and happiness can be found outside of ourselves, that if we behave correctly, we will be accepted. We create a need for external validation. Now, the truth is, our essential nature is one of well-being, happiness, contentment, love, peace. And no matter how hard we try to capture these feelings from the outside world, we'll never find true happiness because it has really been there within us all along. What if you believed that there is nothing that you need to change to be or have in order to be happy? What would that look like? Consider for a moment how much energy and time pursuing goals and projects and financial incentives and relationships that we believe will make us happy. So much stress and strain that we experience brought on by misguided attempts to make ourselves feel better, doing or achieving the right things simply because we attribute our good feelings to what we do and where we go. I once had an opportunity to speak on a stage in front of 30,000 people live and more online. It was a huge audience and it was a big stadium. As a nurse, to present my research and my origin story of something that I was very passionate about as a nurse and how it would contribute to healthcare and making healthcare better for everyone. I had an opportunity to step on a stage, inspire hundreds of nurses and tens of thousands of other people with the work that I had completed and the results that I was getting, the things that I was seeing and experiencing. And that experience was so much fun. I got to meet really amazing people. I got to do things that week that I would have never, if somebody had told me that in nursing school that this is where you would one day be, this is the kind of experience that you need to be prepared for as a nurse, I would have said, you are crazy. Never in my wildest dreams did I see myself in a big stadium speaking to tens of thousands of people about my nursing practice. That led to opportunities to connect with hundreds of nurses. And it's led to traveling and connecting and speaking, inspiring, being inspired. I've had a lot of really great opportunities for that. And I share that with you because someone said to me, you need to leverage this opportunity. I wasn't really even sure, besides doing my very best at communicating on that stage and just enjoying it, showing up and doing my very best. That to me was all I could think about. And you need to leverage this opportunity. And then afterwards, how are you leveraging this opportunity? You need to make this opportunity last. Leverage it for the future. I honestly did not know what that meant, and it took the fun out of being present in the moment and really enjoying that. That still is an accomplishment, and that is an opportunity that I will cherish. And to be quite honest, I'd love to do it again sometime. So I don't know how that's going to happen because I didn't actually go after that opportunity. It just came to me. And it was fun. I'd love to do it again. And I'd love to also, and then sometimes I think I'd like to go back to that moment and really capitalize on that moment by just being present and having a better camera so that I could take some pictures. Maybe asking someone else to take some better pictures. See the things that come in your mind and instead of focusing on what is true. And I missed some of that by taking hold of that message of, okay, if I'm going to do this correctly, I need to leverage this opportunity. And I still don't really know what that means. Regardless, stay present, enjoy your experiences. It might not be in front of 30,000 people, but whatever it is, that's where we need to be. My thinking that I need to figure out quickly how to leverage that opportunity and master that skill right away took away from that experience a little bit. In the end, if I think my well-being comes from being around a particular person or particular people group, I do all sorts of things that maybe I wouldn't do otherwise and put up with all sorts of things that I wouldn't otherwise put up with in order to keep that person or people group around. If I think my well-being comes from my work or my income, I will over-invest in my job and even be willing to ignore my common sense and wisdom to preserve it or enhance it. If I think my well-being comes from food or drugs, I'll do whatever it takes to get a hold of that food or that drug the next time I'm feeling the need for another hit of good feelings, because the nature of that thought, whatever we continue to think, will continue to appear to be real. Our world is what we think it is. And when we think that any of these things will make us happier, they will, at least for a little bit. Now, exploring that deeper nature of ourselves is a lifelong journey, and it's a beautiful one. But most of us get caught up in the drama of our personalities that we miss out on the joy and the wisdom of what is more real inside us. If my husband ever watches this, he's going to wonder where in the world this came from, and where is this person when she walks outside of that room and away from that microphone, because I'm on the journey with you. These are things I know to be true and things that I need to work on to overshadow some of those thoughts that just come automatically at me, and I can't control them. But what I can do is replace them with truth. What if, rather than working on confidence and self-image and self-esteem and balance, all of those things that we're working on, what if we believe that underneath that mask, underneath all the thoughts about what is wrong with us, is really something extraordinary? What if instead we just go for what we want, rather than going for what we want in the hope that it will one day make us happy? So what if I just decide that I'm going to be the best nurse that I can be? Not because it's going to make me happy or it's going to bring me success. What if I'm going to just want to be the best coach I can be? Not because it will produce revenue and then I'll get to quit my other job and I will get to work from a chair on the beach, but because I really want to be a good coach and I want to be there for people on this journey. I want to go on this beautiful journey with you. So what if I just become a better coach and I become a better communicator, because that forwards the mission, but not because it's going to make me happy? All right. So I'm going to give you a challenge and let's see how this plays out. Now, I have installed a voice recorder below on the show notes and on my website, and I'd love to hear from you. If you're going to take this challenge, I'd love for you to do it and then leave me a message and share with me how it went. 1, take a week from working on yourself in any way. Don't try to change yourself or improve or fix yourself. Just enjoy hanging out with your work, your hobbies, and your loved ones. All right. And if you can't bring yourself to take a whole week off, take a few days. And if you can't bring yourself to take a few days, just take 1. And I'd love to hear how this goes. No working on yourself. Don't try to change anything or fix anything. Just enjoy hanging out with you, your hobbies, your loved ones. All right. In a nutshell, well-being is not the fruit of something that you do. It's the essence of who you are, and there's nothing you need to change or be or have to be happy. Now, doesn't mean you're going to be happy all the time, because nobody is. That is not even the goal. So when I say let's default to yes, to default to your extraordinary self, it's a hope that we start waking up to the thought-created nature of your experience and the rest of the simple feeling of just being who you are. Then we can work on those skills, right? Now, the reason that self-worth is so important, or so experts tell us, is that we will inevitably live up or down to our self-image. And that is that we will become more and more like the person that we think or are afraid that we really are. So if someone believes, for example, you believe that you are shy, you're going to tend to behave in a shy manner. If you believe that you're more confident, you'll tend to show up more confidently. If you believe that you aren't brave, you'll shy away from risks. Affirmations, again, tending to if we're trying to convince ourselves of something that we don't believe that we are, but we want to be, or are we reminding ourselves of who we are and how we want to show up in the world? Now, it's important to point out that visualization, mindfulness practice, aromatherapy, affirmation, hypnosis, meditation, They may well have an impact on the way we see ourselves, but sometimes we just need to work on a skill. Learn to sell better. Learn how to recognize and interpret heart rhythms. Get better at our skills, and then we will feel better. Or we will eliminate the things that we continually try to do that make us miserable, or the people we hang out with that chip away at our sense of worth and well-being. I want you to take this challenge of not working on yourself, because in the beginning we started talking about a wandering mind, and there are a couple things that you can do as you take this challenge to decrease the mind wandering, or to notice it and to really take advantage of becoming aware. So especially if you're going to do this for a whole week, you're going to need some tools. And that, first of all, just cultivating that mindfulness. And that's just by focusing on your breath or bodily sensations or the environment. Train your mind to stay grounded and reduce the frequency of wandering thoughts. Another way that you can do this is just by decreasing overwhelm, by not maybe focusing, if you have a big goal, break it down to manageable pieces every day that you're going to do these things to get to your goal by the end of the week without having to get overwhelmed by the bigger picture. And then again, limit the multitasking. Despite the belief that in the efficiency of multitasking, it a lot of times leads to an increase of cognitive load and distraction. So focus on one thing at a time. That's going to allow that greater engagement and reduce the likelihood of wandering thoughts. And you may find yourself in this week being able to create some rituals. So infusing mindfulness into your daily routine, whether it's savoring your morning coffee, taking a mindful walk, practicing gratitude before bedtime. There's the doorway transition trigger where every time you go through a doorway, you could even remind yourself, I'm going to stay present in this moment and just notice what comes my way. So it could be just something as simple as that. Every time you go through a doorway, you get out of your car, you get into your car. These are ways that you're going to keep yourself from trying to fix something or work on anything. Study shows that our thinking has a bigger impact on happiness than what we're actually doing. And studies suggest that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind, and thinking about the present moment can lead to greater happiness. So, will you take this challenge with me this week? Again, hit the voice recorder. So when you do this, you can either hit the voice recorder and tell me that you're doing it as a way of just creating that accountability for yourself, and then share with me how it went. So you're going to take a week off from working on yourself in any way. Don't try to change anything or improve yourself. Just enjoy hanging out with you, with your work, your hobbies, your loved ones. And again, if you can't take a week, take a few days. If you can't take a few days, take at least one day, and then let me know how it goes. Embracing the truth about you. And the truth about you is that you already are extraordinary. Happiness and misery are just part of the human experience, and neither are good or bad. They just are. And overall well-being, which is a broad idea that encompasses happiness, health, and a meaningful life, it may, in essence, be the one thing that we as humans strive for, even if we define well-being in different ways. What would it look like if you believed that it is already within you? What if you could work towards your goals without that sense of worth, without having to bolster a sense of confidence, without it meaning anything about the core of who you are? What if you could just know already how extraordinary you are? Knowing how much you matter. Go out and create something beautiful. Music, art, business, competency, caring, whatever it is that makes your heart sing. As you get up every day and default to yes, your extraordinary self. All right, if you enjoyed this, if this spoke to you, make sure you hit the voice recorder and let me know. Subscribe and share it with your friends. Let's create a great big community of those who get up every day and default to extraordinary. I'm honored to be on this journey with you, and I can't wait to hear how this challenge goes for you.